Hey again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you live on tape from Kyoto with another Lost in Anime season preview. And this time around, it's fall 2023. And it's an interesting season. Doesn't look like a great season like spring did. Doesn't look like kind of a meh season like summer did. And both those have more or less turned out to be accurate. Fall is Fall is an interesting one. It's got a lot of wild cards, a lot of hard to peg shows, a little more genre diversity than I think we're used to recently. So on balance, I don't see a lot on the schedule that makes me say, "Wow, this is going to be great." But it does have probably more range between the upside and the downside than most seasons have lately. It's also a honkin' huge season at 61 shows, plus all the ONAs and OVAs too, taking us up close to 70, which is obviously too many. We all know that the anime industry is producing too many shows. That's a given at this point, but that's a really, really big season. I don't remember being over 60 just on broadcast anime for a long time. So it's going to be an interesting season. It has one or two obvious hits to me, and then everything else after that is largely in crapshoot territory. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. At the very least, we have a lot of uncertainty, and that gives us a certain intrigue going into the season. So without further ado, because Lord knows I am trying to keep these previews under 30 minutes if I can, they just tend to run so long. I'm going to jump right in. And you can't jump right into this season without talking about Pluto, which call it a series, call it an ONA, call it whatever you want. It's 8 1-hour episodes on Netflix. It's easily the most anticipated series of the season for me, if you want to call it a series. It's the most anticipated anime of the season. It's one of the most anticipated anime for me in years because it's based on a manga, which I consider to be a true masterpiece, which is based on another manga, which I also consider to be a true masterpiece. Urasawa Naoki, who is himself one of the great mangaka of the last probably 30 to 40 years, wrote this series Pluto as a sort of a updating and riff on the Osamu Tezuka Astro Boy series, Tetsuwan Atom. And he recast it as kind of a modern thriller, a modern sort of a sci-fi thriller mystery, bunch of robots. And when we say robots, we're really talking about humanoid robots on the scale of AI no Idenshi, basically indistinguishable from human or close to. And the real story behind Pluto is not so much that it's a work of a genius based on the work of another genius, which is as great as you would imagine, but there's a third key figure here, and that's Maruyama Masao, who is the anime legend who has been trying for decades, really, to get this thing produced and fighting the anime industry not wanting to pony up the dough to do it. Maruyama, who some believe the studio owner character in Shirobako is based on, is really a beloved figure. He founded Madhouse Studio, he founded Mappa Studio, and now he's founded M2 Studio. And really, the last two were more or less founded for the express purpose of trying to get into position to get Pluto made. And he finally did it with the help of Netflix. So there you go. Pluto. What I say about this series is if it got a great adaptation on the level of Tengoku Daimakyo, one which maximized all of the potential of the source material, it would be an all-time top 5 anime probably. If it gets a good, solid, competent, competent adaptation, it should be top 5 2023. Hopefully, with Maruyama involved as the producer, it's not going to be less than that. He's put together a very experienced staff. Does not have a big time experienced director behind it, but his name is Kawaguchi Toshio, and he's a very well regarded and well established animator, but has not really done much in directing. And he got in 8 hours roughly 22 episodes worth of material. And for years, Maruyama insisted that Pluto needed 39 episodes to be told properly. Well, he didn't get it. He got effectively 22. So hopefully, hopefully not having that auteur director, hopefully not having those 39 episodes does not take away too much from the ceiling here, because as I say, the ceiling on Pluto is pretty much limitless. I'm very hopeful, but cautiously so. The previews I thought looked pretty good. Not, there were a couple things that seemed odd and off to me. Some of the cinematography, some of the transitions, it just didn't look quite there. The last couple of previews though have looked pretty good. Going from 39 episodes to 22 is a big drop off, but I feel Maruyama will do everything within his power to make this show successful. And because he's not so just respected, but genuinely beloved in the industry, his staff, very experienced for the most part, staff that he has working on this, seem like they would go all out to do whatever they could to make this a success for him. So Pluto is easily the top pick of the season for me. It would be the top pick of almost any season. And we'll see what happens. It's another example of Netflix allowing a series to be made that probably wouldn't have been made otherwise. Yet another reason, really, I consider the net effect of Netflix on anime, no pun intended, to be a positive one, because it is allowing series to be produced that frankly would not be produced if Netflix didn't exist. So I threw that 30-minute number out there. I could talk for 30 minutes on Pluto, no problem. But I'm going to move on. And the next one I want to talk about is Sousou no Frieren. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Frieren. It's a high fantasy manga, which is almost universally well regarded, I would say. It's been one of those manga that's been on my need to read list for a long time. And frankly, the only reason I haven't read it is when the anime was announced. I thought, well, at this point, I might as well wait and go into it fresh, which is what I'm doing. So that's where we are, and it's won many awards. It gets great reviews on aggregator sites. I have personal recommendations from people whose opinions I strongly respect, who tell me this thing is really good. So as much as I can on a series I have no direct personal experience with, Frieren Beyond Journey's End, Frieren at the Funeral. It has two different English titles, one for the manga localization, one for the anime. It as sure as I can be about something that I don't know personally, I expect this thing to be pretty damn good. It's a story about an elf, a mage, who is part of a legendary party of heroes that accomplishes effectively taking out Sauron level feats. But because she's an elf and all of her colleagues, her comrades are not, she has to experience the pain of outliving everyone who's close to her. Thus, the Frieren at the Funeral designation on the manga title in English. So, it's a great idea. It's a great concept. It's a by all accounts a great manga. It's ongoing. And it's being produced by Madhouse, which is of course Maruyama's original studio. Madhouse, of course, they have an august history in anime that does not need to be reiterated or even iterated. But they haven't been hitting at this level very often in the last couple of years. This is about as high profile series as we've seen them grab for a while. It has Saito Keiichiro directing, who was the director of Bocchi the Rock, which was not a series I loved in terms of the writing, but was certainly stylistically it was a wonderful production. So no downfall there. The previews look great. It's looking like it's going to be two cores for now, possibly split, possibly not. And then if it's successful, I suppose they'll get another two-core series to either finish it if the manga is finished, or at least continue it. So it'll rank on the 2024 top 10 list if it ranks. But I expect, my expectations for this one are extremely high. And those are the only two shows I have on my highest expectations tier this season. They're very high expectations, but those are the only two. As we jump down into the LIA second tier, which is mid-table, I've got a few shows in there. The first being Kusuriya no Hitorigoto, the Apothecary Diaries, which is another one where if you talk to people who read the manga, that seems almost universally well loved. The fact that it was originally a light novel, 3 years later came the manga. I'm biased enough that that does color my opinion a little, but enough people, again, enough people whose opinions I respect think highly of this that I feel positive about it. It's set in an imperial court in ancient China, which, that's certainly fruitful. It's about a 17-year-old who's kidnapped and forced to work at the palace, which is a kind of a thing in this mythology. Because she's very smart, there's a bit of a Shirayuki Hime thing going on here. She ends up being a pharmacist at the court, and really effectively being a mystery solver. And she gets involved in court affairs. So it's, again, an interesting premise. Solid staff that doesn't look overwhelmingly great, but looks solid. And Kevin Penkin is one of several people composing music for it. So I suppose that should rank it pretty highly. So among the mid-table shows, even though it is based on a light novel, that's the one that probably has the highest upside for me. Moving on from there, we jump to Houkago Shonen Hanako-kun, which is a spin-off of Jibaku Shonen Hanako-kun. And it would be ranked higher because I have an extremely high opinion of the parent series, but it's only 4 episodes and they're 10-minute episodes. And it's based off a spin-off manga, which is by the original mangaka, which is Ida. So, I mean, the fact that it's a spin-off manga doesn't bother me so much. It is a short. It's half-length and it's only 4 episodes. So that's why it doesn't rank in the highest expectations category. But nevertheless, it's Hanako-kun, and it's canon. So it's more comedy-driven from what I understand than the parent series is. The hope is that this is a precursor to the reboot or continuation of the original anime that was more or less promised a few months ago. I hope that wasn't referring only to this project. That would be a big disappointment if it was. But for now, we get 4 episodes of Hanako-kun, so let's enjoy those. Next up, Yuzuki-san Chi no Yonkyoudai, which is about 4 brothers living alone after their parents have died. And the oldest brother is old enough to be a full-time salary person, so he supports the others. A couple of them are teenagers. One of them is quite young. I remember reading a few chapters of this, maybe 5 or 6 chapters of it, a couple of years ago at least, and rather liking it. Not loving it, but rather liking it. And for whatever reason, I stopped it, maybe because the translations dried up. But I do remember liking it. Most of the plot seems to be driven by the third of 4 brothers, who's kind of a scamp and gets into trouble a lot, and then feels bad about it. And it's got a good experienced staff at Studio Shuka, which is, of course, the spin-off of Brainspace that was more or less founded after that schism to be the Natsume Yujinsho studio. And it's a shoujo too, and we don't get a lot of shoujo manga adaptations these days. Most shoujo manga, if they get adapted at all, seem to get adapted to live action now. So I'm looking forward to it for that reason. I have fairly high expectations of this. The previews look good. My overall vibe on this, even though, again, I only have limited experience with the manga, is it should be pretty good. Next up on that category is Mahoutsukai no Yome, Season 2, Part 2. We're getting into Attack on Titan territory with these titles. Not quite that bad. Not Trost territory, anyway. I was frankly pretty disappointed in Part 1 of the second season. The whole Hogwarts setting, to me, did not really work for this mythology nearly as well as the rural setting of the first season. It had high moments. It had some good moments. Perhaps not coincidentally, some of the best were on the trip to rural Scotland for the school camping expedition. I still like this series a lot. I still like the main characters. I like Elias. I like Chisei. I liked some of the student characters. I just didn't think the setting really worked. My hope is that the second tier, the second core, will be better than the first core. We'll see. Next is 100 Girlfriends. 100 Girlfriends. Kimi no Koto ga Daidaidaidaiisuki na 100 nin no Kanojo, which is a series I think under most circumstances, cold turkey, I probably would have said, nope, Enzo, that's not for you. But again, some people whose opinion, who I trust, who know me well, have said, you know what, I think you'll like it. And it's also seinen, which is interesting given the premise, which is about a kid who's rejected 100 times at romance, prays at a love shrine, and then the kami tells him that he's going to meet 100 soulmates in high school. So again, purely based on premise, I kind of I may have watched the premiere. I might have watched the premiere, but that probably would have been about it. But again, some people are telling me you'll be surprised by this one, and it is a sign-in, so we're going to give it a shot. And then last in this category, Overtake. Overtake is an original, which again, those are all crapshoots. The interesting thing with Overtake is it's got a good staff. Aoka is directing. The character designs are by Shimura Takako of Roro Musuko fame. And the writer, who is always the most important person in an original anime, is not someone whose track record is great, and her name is Sakine Ayume. But there's enough interesting people involved here that have me sort of thinking maybe sleeper. It's also interesting that we're getting 2 auto racing anime this season when there have been very, very few auto racing anime over the years. If we were going to get one, I would have loved it if it was a continuation of Kapeta, but since we're not getting that, of the 2, Overtake is the more interesting to me. It's about a young, looks like Formula 3 racer in Japan, or Formula J, whatever they call it, and then a freelance photographer who's kind of in a rut. And when he meets this young genius driver, he sort of gets his interest level rekindled. It does look kind of interesting to me. We'll give it a shot. Again, good people involved is always a good sign. You can't. The material will be as good as the writing, and that's the one area that concerns me a little. But at least, like I say, I have a mild sleeper vibe with this one. And that takes us to the modestly interested category, which is just jam-packed this season. So, which this is really where basically half the preview is. So I'm gonna fly through these. Spy Family 2. Okay, you know my feelings about Spy Family. I do like it. At its high points, could be very good. Most of those high points were the comedy involving the school and the drama involving Damien and his family subplot. Maybe we'll get more of that in the second season, judging by the poster and the previews for it. I don't know. There are also a lot of mediocre episodes in the first season, though, so that's why this isn't ranking higher for me. Megito Dali is by the same mangaka as Sakamoto desu ka, and the backstory here is a really sad one. That mangaka, Sano Nami, passed away at the age of 35 just last month, which is really sad. So I liked Sakamoto. I didn't love it. I would have been interested in Megito Dali. At this point, I have a real rooting interest, and I would really like to see it do well under the circumstances, especially. Undead Unluck, mid-tier Shonen Jump. Breeze through it, doesn't look great to me, but we'll give it a shot. The other auto racing one is MF Ghost, which is a sequel to Initial D, it looks like, which doesn't really help me because I don't know anything about Initial D either. But this one is more of a futuristic sci-fi auto racing anime, which I'll check out anyway. But on paper, it's less interesting to me than Overtake. Among the others, there's a sign-in called Atarashii Joshi Wado Tennen, which is about a guy who works at a black company who ends up going to another company and is in fear that it's going to repeat itself, but winds up having a vastly different experience. It's mainly here because the director is Abe Noriyuki, who's not only very experienced, but has done some great series. And other than that, I don't have anything else in this category that really jumps out for me, except possibly Tokyo Revengers Tenjiku-hen, and not because I'm expecting it to be particularly good, but because it is Tokyo Revengers, and Tokyo Revengers is a kaiju. It's one of the great power series, one of the commercial titans. The second season, honestly, was a fairly significant step down from the first for me, and I don't exactly consider the first one to be Citizen Kane. So I stuck with Attack on Titan to the end, if it ever gets here, because I have so much invested in that. I like Spy Family enough to stick with that one. Tokyo Revengers, I'm at the point where it has to pick up, or else I'm going to probably drop it, but I'll at least check out this Tenjiku-hen and see if it does anything for me. So the will definitely blog list for the season is really only Pluto and Frieren and Houkago Shounen Hanako-kun, but with so many modestly interested, I suspect one or the two of those will probably make the cut. Most likely Spy Family will, and I'm sure I'll pick up a couple of the mid-table ones too. Most likely, knock on wood, I'll pick up a couple of those mid-tables, but it's a small, definitely list. The sleeper list is really only Overtake for me at this point. Maybe this Atarashii Joushi wa do Tennen, because Noriyuki is directing. That might be one. Now, one of the reasons this is an interesting season and an unusual season is the usually dead category of OVA actually has some interesting stuff in it. And really, technically speaking, you should probably throw Pluto in here, or at least ONA. But I couldn't not lead the preview with Pluto, so I guess I cheated a bit and called it a series. But in terms of pure OVAs, we have something called Goodnight World, which is an interesting concept for me. It's a pretty well-regarded manga adaptation of sci-fi, a dysfunctional family interacting in an online game without realizing they're doing it. The problem is it's Naz, which did the ultimate hatchet job on Biscuit Hammer, which, that should have been before the UN Crimes Tribunal. So limited expectations there, but I'll at least check it out. Then we have Akuma-kun. It's a big season for Mizuki Shigeru. He has Akuma-kun, which is one of his non-Kitarou manga, and it's a story about a young boy, a boy genius who's also a master of the dark arts and curses, things like that. The only time anime has really taken a stab at this one was 33 years ago. It's not nearly as tried and true as Gegege no Kitarou, so it was due for a refresh. And it's directed by Sato Junichi. It's pretty rare for him to direct a series with a male protagonist, and it just generally seems like an odd series for him. But he has talent. He usually spends it on stuff that's not of interest to me, but he does have talent. It's another Netflix series. Very interested to see where this goes. And then Onmyouji, yet another Netflix show, based on a novel, always a good sign, about Abe no Seimei, the legendary Onmyouji, thus the title. I don't know anything about the source novel. It's not translated into English as far as I know, but it's Netflix. It's got some money in it. It's based on a novel, not a light novel or a manga. And Seimei is always an interesting subject for fiction, so I'm interested to see where that goes. And not only that, theatrical looks, frankly, jam-packed. Normally with anime, theatrical gets tilted towards summer. That's when we tend to see most theatrical films in anime. But this time around, its fall is loaded in the theatrical department. I don't ever remember having 6 movies in a preview before. This time I do. I'll go by date. First one being Hokkyoku Hyakkaten no Concierge-san, which is about a concierge at a department store whose clients are all animals, including extinct ones who are considered the VIP customers. Really weird idea, and its production ID. I'm intrigued enough to be curious as to what this is going to be like. The visuals should at least be good. It's production IG. Then we have Hino Tori, Ada no Hana, which is about a phoenix, the firebird. It was a 1967 manga, so we're only going back 57 years on this one, about a mythical phoenix which is like a witness to the great moments in human history. It's a complete shot in the dark for me, but I don't know. It just kind of catches my eye. It's kind of a movie sleeper. Then we have a Komada Joryusho e Yokoso, which is a whiskey family. So we're talking about what I would describe as worlds are colliding for me, because 2 of my great passions in life are anime and whiskey, and they very rarely come together. So I'm very interested to see what PA Works does with this. It is a PA Works show. It looks lovely, as their shows often do. Whiskey is a big business in Japan. This is about a family distillery who's kind of trying to rediscover a lost recipe for their signature whiskey. I'm very interested to see where this goes. Whiskey making is a very interesting subject, and it's got Yoshihara Masayuki directing, who is the Uchuten Kazoku director, who I consider to be PA Works' top gun at this point. So at this stage, I would say my expectations for Whiskey Family are pretty high. It's definitely hits, it's in my butter zone as far as theme is concerned, and it's PA Works with a director I like. So optimistic there. Then it's the other Mizuki Shigeru revival this season, and this time it's Kitarou Tanjo, Gegege no Nazo, which is, this one is a theatrical film that's in the canon of the 2018 TV series, which I happen, as you know, to think was a little inconsistent, but at its best, really, really good. I'm a big fan of that version of the series, so I'm very interested to see where the movie goes. It looks, the subtitle in English is Why Was I Born? So it's very clearly some sort of Kitarou origin story, and probably an anime original one, but the anime original material in the 2018 series was often very good. So I have a lot of interest in that. Again, a big season for Mizuki Shigeru. But one of the reasons this is all tied into the 100th anniversary of his birth, his 100th birthday. So that's why there's a lot of interest in Mizuki at the moment. Last in this category is, oh nope, there's two more. Yanaura no Rudger, or Rudger, in the English, the Imaginary. It's Studio Ponok, which is, of course, effectively the spin-off studio from Studio Ghibli. That can be hit and miss, Ghibli Light, if you will, Ghibli Light. But I like what I see from the previews on this. The art really looks good. It's an original story, as far as I know. It's about a young girl who has an imaginary friend called Rudger, which is the title. He's stalked by an imaginary hunter, and it's a little bit of a road film, chase film, scary film. Obviously, if you see the previews, you'll see a big time Ghibli vibe. You would expect that. I'm very interested. You know, Ponok can be hit and miss because it's Ghibli, but it's not. But it's you know, it's got a 70-year-old named Momose Yoshiyuki directing, who's a longtime Ghibli veteran, but has never done anything of this magnitude before, as far as I can tell. So I have some interest in that, and we'll see where it goes. Last is the Spy Family movie. We have, in addition to the second season of the TV, we have the Spy Family movie, Code White. I'm more interested in the TV series, frankly, than I am in the movie, because the movie is 100% anime original. I didn't think the anime original material in the first season of the anime was broadly very good. It doesn't seem to focus on the areas of the story which are of more interest to me, and it doesn't have Furuhashi Kazuhiro directing. So low expectations for this for me, but when they stream it, I'll watch it. And that, my dear listeners, at just under 30 minutes as we sit here, as we speak, is the fall 2023 season preview. As I say, it looks like it should be an interesting season. I'm looking forward to seeing if some of these many wild cards on the schedule, seeing if any of them, you know, if we hit a big hand with any of those. Hopefully we do. Hopefully the tent poles, Frieren and Pluto, carry their weight, and the OVAs and the movies really have a bigger stake this season than they have in any season for a long time. Hopefully the quality is there to match the quantity. As always, I thank you very much for listening. I thank you very much for watching. I thank you very much for reading. It goes without saying, but I would be very grateful if you would like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for future video or bespoke anime projects, bespoke Enzo projects at LIA, please let me know in the comments, either on the website post or on this YouTube video. And as I implore you every time we speak, but it never becomes less important, please, whatever else you do, stay frosty.